Good day, and greetings, Graeme.
Greetings, Doru. I hope you are well.
Sun is up
Yes,
in
and
Sydney.
our prime ministers are getting along well, so that's encouraging too.
We had a bad streak weather-wise, but yeah, hopefully we'll get a bit of light to bask in for the next few days. Yeah, it's such a joy to see you more often of late than we did in the past, and it's very encouraging to see that actually the very few viewers of this YouTube channel actually begin to catch up with our conversations and enjoy. Before anything else, let's just look a bit at where we are at. So this is the AIOCS channel, and this is the conversations page, the main hub where we collect our encounters and our discussions. And this would be the 32nd, yeah? For the time being, we had 6 conversations, and while the previous one, number 6, was just a couple of days ago, already 14 views. So it begins to I don't know, stir the waters. So number 1 has 67, number 2 34, and so on and so forth. Apparently number 4 was very popular, 57 views, so a jump from 28 to number 3 and so on. Well, look, we do this for ourselves, first of all, or I should say for myself, because I initiated this series in the hope that I could learn wisdom from you. As I said, I have been so moved by your poem, appendix to your 4th article in Christian Perspectives in Science and Technology, and I thought there's a lot of material there that can be unpacked as we do via these conversations, and I could learn, and I did learn. I see that others appreciate it. And before I give you the floor, I just want to point out that one of my friends in South Australia, we never met in person, but we are actually in touch a lot. Martin praises this series, saying these conversations ascend into realms of deep understanding. So ascending into realms of deep understanding, I can understand the paradox. Understand the like of which I could never have imagined. By comparison and precedent, the opening of the scriptures on the road to Emmaus is how I am affected. It sounds good. I mean, this is very encouraging, and this is actually what we are seeking to get deeper into the mystery of our existence, of this wonderful creation of God, which is also the product of billions and billions of years of evolution on the cosmic scale, less so on the life scale as we know it on Earth, but still billions. With Graeme's guidance, I was able to learn more and appreciate more the complexity of life, of existence, and so on. So thank you once again, Graeme. And
the privilege is mine, Doru. I mean, I feel my heart burning as well as we approach God's great plan. It really is humbling.
It is. And yeah, as Martin pointed out, Martin is, we call him the patriarch of our group. We pray together, and he's 80,
Oh, good.
and he is such a vibrant soul. Yeah, and I think a week ago or so we mentioned the Emmaus experience, and we realized how significant it is.
Yes, indeed.
Anyway, so last time, let's find the text. Okay, last time we did 2 stanzas after a very moving introduction, kind of recapitulation and return to the previous topic, which blew my mind. And then we did 2 more stanzas, Israel and Jesus, and we are now heading towards the new creation. But as I noticed, there's always something else to add, something more to point out in regard to our previous discussion. So, Graeme, would you like to add further thoughts to anything that we might have said not enough last time?
Well, to cover the entire scriptures in 2 stanzas, Doru, is ambitious indeed, if not irreverent. But really, last time we finished on Good Friday. And if the words I used seem irreverent, almost trivial, that is where the world was when the body of Jesus hung on the cross and when he was laid in the tomb. It is the ultimate paradox that in the crucifixion and the sacrifice and the self-giving of Jesus, we have God's ultimate revelation of himself. And I've just got a couple of things I might read just to put better minds. This is a very precious book, Genes, Genesis, and God, from the Christian philosopher Holmes Rolston. He says the essential theme of Christianity and Judaism is that suffering love is divine. And so we see in this ultimate of suffering, the crucifixion of Jesus, the exposure of God's heart to human beings. He said it's the way of history too, like that of nature, only more so, is a via dolorosa. Since the beginning, the myriad creatures have been giving up their lives as a ransom for many. We look at the history of life, and it's been exposed in the previous stanzas somewhat haltingly. But obviously we are confronted with history, with nature red in tooth and claws, what has been a stumbling block to many. But Holmes Rolston says this: in that sense, Jesus is not an exception to the natural order, but a chief exemplification of it. The suffering of the creatures to produce you and me an habitable earth is really just part of the story of God's kenosis, God's giving. So it's very humbling. And another thing I want to read is from a little book called I Am, This Is My Name, by a previous New Zealand theologian. He speaks of the weary period of exile, Israel's exile, following on from the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 587 BC. This weary period of exile, the 50 years of defeat of body, mind, and spirit, was that moment within the history when the world's, the period of the axial religions, But this Israel was not an axial religion. They had been on the journey for 1,000 years already. When two more of world's religions were conceived, though not yet born, conceived in the womb of chaotic and unregulated life of Babylon. For it was then that was this unknown voice in 2nd Isaiah, a voice. From the moment of seeming annihilation, that Judaism and Christianity took their rise. From that death, from that massacre, that terrible equation. And came the birth only a couple of generations earlier, with the death of Jesus. He was speaking of the destruction of Jerusalem as another terrible moment. But he speaks of the death of Jesus, also at the hand of Rome. Ended the period that Jewish thinkers had begun to call the birth pangs of the Messiah. So 587 BC, 33 AD, we see God's great rebirths of the hope of humankind. And that's just where we left things in the grave. Jesus' grave, the other terrible occasion from which God was going to renew all of reality. So sorry, I rather stumbled with that. But just like the bolide which hit Earth, here were God's two greatest moments in the history of humanity, when in the midst of human evil, he would reveal his most loving heart.
And always this revelation coincides with an evolutionary leap, so to speak. It happened with the bolide, or after the bolide, you know,
Yeah.
then an evolutionary leap leading to us. It happened with the old Israel, and already from the ashes of the old Israel, sacrificed on the altar of history.
Yeah.
We have the rebirth of more branches.
Yes.
And already where's that? I think in Isaiah, where's the new flag? A new flag, a new whatever, the pointer of a new nation. The psalmist speaks of a new song, and so on and so forth. And there's always, death and resurrection. And resurrection is always more than a return.
Yes.
It is a leap forward.
Yes, that we cannot imagine, could not have been anticipated.
Yeah. And this is a revelation of love that transforms a tragedy into the opportunity of something perhaps better, but anyway, something definitely new.
And I think it's of great existential significance to us too, that when we have a tragedy, we can respond perhaps in two main ways.
Yeah.
We can be bitter and twisted and angry and resentful, and we can destroy ourselves. Or we can react in hope and faith and see God somehow as having the power to bring something out of it. And so be brought to transcendence. And I think we've seen that so many times with God's people. Tertullian, the West, who said that the seed of the martyrs, the death of the blood of the martyrs, is the seed of the church.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe the church struggles because we don't sacrifice it.
Yeah.
We're just too concerned with self-preservation and the status quo.
Yeah.
But where God's people suffer, I think a Nigerian man told me that in northern Nigeria, where the church is so persecuted and suffering, that it is growing. There is a new revelation of God in that suffering.
True. Yeah. Well, we already know from the sermons of both Christ and Paul that only insofar as the seed dies and is buried will rise and give Well, hundredfold, thousandfold.
Yes, right.
Yeah. There's something else I was reading earlier, the same, the last stanza we did last time, Jesus. And there's something that strikes me as another key that we have in the story of the Lord for unlocking certain mysteries within the evolutionary history of life. I don't know where biologists stand today, or what's their view in regard to the so-called survival of the fittest. I read long ago some essays by Stephen Jay Gould saying that, well, it's not quite like that. In reality, when you have a population of, I don't know what, animals or plants that are so specialized within the status quo, and something catastrophic occurs, those go first because they are unable to adapt to the new situation, whereas the less fit within the status quo might survive. And yeah, I was reading the first lines of your Jesus stanza, and I thought, well, the Lord does precisely that, helps those that are less adapted to the social status quo, the marginalized, the outcast, poor, lepers, lame, blind, Gentiles, women, children. Not one was left behind. And those are two of your verses. And I realized that everything that we see in the story of Jesus, or Yeshua, the Lord who saves, has actually an evolutionary meaning, and helps us make sense of why the unexpected happens, that the less fit keeps going and the most adapted doesn't.
Yes, of course, the survival of the fittest came from Herbert Spencer, not Darwin. And he was a social evolutionist, trying to apply Darwin's ideas to human society. And so, in a way, he was a prophet of eugenicism and all those sort of horrible things. So you're quite right. The people we naturally tend to overlook are those with whom God cares, for whom God cares, and with whom he can do great things. Yeah.
I mean, it makes so much sense, but see, only when you have this kind of narrative, as you outline for all of us to read and reflect on, we can connect the dots. Yeah, we see the Lord say, I haven't come for the righteous and the healthy. I've come for sinners and the sick. He always welcomes those that are unwelcomed anywhere else. I mean, within the established order of a certain society. And he has no problem. And the Lord does on earth, walking amongst us, what the Lord does continuously in the whole history of the universe and in the whole history of life on earth. Does the same stuff. And this is why I believe the early Christians had no qualms, and they could easily recognize him for who he was, that he is who he is, the creator. Yes. Because his gestures, his words are precisely the gestures and the words of the creator.
And we so easily forget that, don't we? I mean, many Christians who reject evolution say, I can't believe that God would bring new things into being by a process which is full of suffering and sickness and death. But of course, he brought Israel into being from a bunch of slaves. What could be more earthy? What raw material could be more impoverished than slaves in Egypt? And then when we look in Ephesians, he brings his church into existence from, oh, well, this is Corinthians, sorry, not many of you are wise or of high social
Dregs of
standing.
society. The
You are
dregs.
the dregs of society. And we
Yeah.
need to remember it. We need to remember it, that we are blessed, not because of worth in ourselves, but because of the worth that God devolves, he himself gives to us.
Right.
Thank you, Dolly.
Woo. Yep. I don't know. I have to do something to keep going with you, Graeme, even after we finish the last of your stanzas, which
Yeah.
thankfully is still far away from us.
Oh, well, we're getting there. Okay, so Easter Sunday now, is it?
Yeah.
New creation. Then on Easter Sunday, a brand new world appears. Death and sin are vanquished, the end of human fears. Now Jesus has been raised, his body is transformed, every proud and hateful stronghold truly has been stormed. Evil, death, and sorrow do not have the final say. God will make all things new. Rejoice in the new day. Maria, first to hear the Lord's voice, precious sound, he called her Miriam. The true self had been found. Cleopas and his mate, whose grieving minds were churning, heard Jesus on the road. With joy, their hearts are burning. Thomas scorned his colleague's tale with incredulity. Seeing Jesus was the first, his deity. Unprecedented sign. What's the indication? Jesus has the Father's utter vindication. Jesus resurrected? Are nature's laws deranged? The world is recreated. Ontology is changed. God is always faithful. This world's laws aren't repealed. But in resurrection, the new world's laws revealed. The law of the Spirit supersedes the law of death. Eternal life is here, infused by God's own breath. The strife of cosmic history makes brilliant sense at last. Creation's winding journey, its travail, pain now past. Cross and resurrection unleashed life-giving force from God into creation to start a whole new course. So he's there for the moment. And of course, pain does continue. Sorrow and death do continue. But the decisive victory has been won.
Yeah. Look, this one is such a rich stanza. I mean, yeah, of course, it's the sequence of the events as we read in the gospel narratives, suffering and the shame of the cross, pain and the apparent defeat, which led the disciples to despair. Is turned into joy, is turned into hope, the new horizon of the resurrectional life, as St. Basil of Caesarea calls it. The resurrectional life is open for us. Paul already has it in Romans 6, to walk in the newness of life, yeah? Insofar as we are dead and then resurrected with Christ. And this is, I mean, in terms of disclosing the inner workings of our Christian life, this is fundamental. It's amazing, and it brings, I think, brings us back to the topic we discussed just a few minutes ago, that there's no leap forward, there's no advancement, there's no progress without sacrifice, suffering, loss. This is how the game, inverted commas, must be played and has been played from the foundation of the world, when the Lamb of God was slain for the world to emerge. Yeah. But you know, because you said earlier, you know, in a previous conversation, you know, biologists and ideologists hate the idea of a God that allows for it, without realizing that it's something that we have to contribute as creation. And the best we can do within the limitations of our nature is to suffer in order to gain something. That's how things go. They want some kind of idealistic God, wholly predictable, behaving, I don't know, like a teddy bear or Santa Claus or whatever, without realizing that there's more at stake there, and there's nobility in suffering, there's nobility in death, there's nobility in despair, insofar as we realize at some point in our journey that there's something else at work. As Paul calls it, there are two forces at work in the world, in our lives. The workings of darkness and the workings of light, and the mystery of life, the mystery of light are usually unseen, but they erupt from time to time to point us towards what's the actual nature of things. And I'd like you, if possible, to return to those verses where you say, well, what's this? Is it a matter of having nature's laws deranged? Is it only a matter of ontology being changed? Or is it in resurrection the new world's laws are revealed? This is such a powerful passage, Graeme.
Well, I hope it reflects scripture, Doru. I'm sure it must.
Well, let me be very irreverent and say, whether or not this is scripture, I still believe that these are very powerful words. But of course, irreverence aside, yes, it's all there in the cross and the resurrection of the Lord. No doubt about it. But the way you put the whole idea against the backdrop of whatever we know from a variety of sciences about how things work, you know, you actually address here in a very delicate way. You don't shock your reader, but if one pays attention to what you say, you know, we come back to the topic of the scandal of the crucifixion, and why not the scandal of the resurrection? What actually happens there? Are the laws of nature, ontology, truly disturbed? Or is it that something else happens in the resurrection of the Lord? Perhaps something like the revelation, not only of a new world to come, but the revelation of the actual deepest laws of nature, which still elude us. What do you reckon?
Well, my understanding, and I've been informed by people like N.T. Wright and others, is that in the resurrection, we had the beginning of the new creation.
Yeah.
And the new creation, the structure of reality is fundamentally different. We can't imagine it because it's beyond our ken, but we see in the resurrection of Jesus the inauguration of God's new creation. So that's the sense in which I meant to say ontology has changed. There is a new reality coming, which is ontologically different from the old reality.
But is it only so, Graeme? I mean, what's at the back of my mind actually is the fact that we are very limited beings.
Yeah.
And we cannot fathom the nature of the universe. Indulge. It's the little booklet I wrote together with an atheist astrophysicist.
All right. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Have to look at it. Yeah.
Okay. And this is one of the questions that actually sort of moved us. Do we really know anything about the universe? The first two chapters of the booklet are about this. Do we really know? And Geraint Lewis, my friend, says, well, actually, after all these centuries of glorious advancement in terms of making sense of the universe, now we are at the threshold of a realization that with the revelation of the existence of dark energy and dark matter, that we don't know more than 5% of the universe. So we know immensely about 5%, but we ignore 95% of the universe. And so this led me to some kind of reflection at the end of chapter 2, if I may. Sorry. This is more a matter of drawing attention to this little book.
Good.
Yeah, but taking advantage of this beautiful stanza, you know, and I say there something like we actually have to realize that even from the viewpoint of theology, scriptural theology, revelational theology, and so on and so forth, that we still don't know everything that is already seated in the gospel of Christ, since the Lord himself tells his disciples in John, whatever it is, 14, 15 or so, the Spirit will come and lead you to the fullness of the truth that I have brought. So we have all the truth poured onto us, but we are like, incapacious vessels. Try to pour the whole content of the Pacific into this cup of coffee.
Into a thimble, yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is how things go, and therefore we cannot presume that we have understood the gospel.
Oh, indeed.
And I am so happy to see that there's a similar kind of feeling among hard scientists who say actually that there's such a huge ocean of unknown out there that we have to humble ourselves.
Absolutely. And, I agree fully, Doru. And in fact,
just a moment. What I said here at the end of chapter 2 is actually the fact that what we think is new and extraordinary, in this case, the resurrection, might actually be the revelation of something that it was already there from the outset, and we had no idea about it.
It could be, yes. Yeah.
You wanted to say something, sorry.
Oh, no, I agree with everything you said, Doru. I think our ignorance is almost total. But somewhere at the back of my mind is the understanding that at least some physicists believe there are multiverses.
Yeah.
Perhaps an infinity of universes. So obviously physics merges into philosophy at this stage and into religion. And whether or not all of those other universes, if they exist, are the same or all totally different is unknown to us. And so we cannot specify. We cannot be surprised at the things God is doing, because, as you say, God may have all sorts of wondrous realities already out there. And I hadn't really thought about that. My understanding was that the resurrection was the inception of a brand new universe of which we know absolutely nothing, a brand new reality.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's the revelation of something that we definitely didn't know. But my question is, if he who died on the cross and resurrected from
Yeah.
the grave
Yeah.
is the creator of that same universe,
Yes.
a universe which he established as the slaughtered lamb on his own sacrifice, kenosis, as you said. Now, is he doing something really new, or just working within a process that existed, and it's yet another leap, yet another evolutionary leap that is caused by a proportional suffering, his own? And in this case, I think the resurrection is, yes, it's new, but not so much.
Not
Or
new to God.
not new to God. It's new because we didn't even know that such a thing can be possible. We were desperate. The disciples believed this is the end. They could not expect the resurrection, although they believed mentally in it. Remember Lazarus's being brought back to life. Martha and Mary meet the Lord journeying towards the tomb of Lazarus, and they confess their faith in the resurrection. But did they really know? Because they knew of the resurrection, but when the Lord confronts them, well, what's your worry then if you believe in the resurrection? Well, what can you do? He's stinking now because he died 4 days ago or whatever, you know? So it's the same with the disciples. They are hopeless. The crucifixion and the burial were the end of the story for them. So the resurrection appears to them to be something radically new. My question is, at this stage, how radical? Because he is the same who established the cosmos, established the universe on his blood, metaphorically speaking. You know, that's what the book of Revelation says, you know. The Lamb of God was slain from the foundation of the world. Huh? And he's the same Lamb of God. Yeah? He's the same Lamb who is now victorious. But what does that victory mean? Yes, utter novelty for his human side. He's also a human being, God incarnate. But as you said, is it actually a novelty in God's eyes? Is it a novelty from the viewpoint of this huge project called the intention of God for the creation? I don't think so. And I think everything conspired towards this moment. Everything converged in this moment when the time was ripe for yet another evolutionary leap, but also for a revelation of a law of nature that we didn't know of. That's how I'm thinking. I know perhaps this isn't what you wanted to convey here, but I was really challenged by the paradox that you built there in those 4 lines. You know, on the one hand, you have the idea of a disturbance of the laws of nature, and perhaps you were thinking of the fallen laws of nature. On the other hand, you see the promise or the emergence, the revelation of certain laws that already anticipate the new creation. So this, I was just trying to make sense of what you say there.
No, I guess it's stretching our minds, isn't it? That we have here the proleptic instantiation of God's great vision. The Romans and Greeks didn't believe in resurrection. It wasn't possible. And as you say, the Jews, it will be at the end of time. But here, in apparently the middle of time, comes this colossal surprise. And as Tom Wright says, there's just a thin curtain between our world and God's. So when Jesus returns, he's just going to step through that interface. the world of Jesus, the new world, is perhaps just on the other side. But I mean, we don't understand, because surely in the new creation, this world, the world in which we live, will also be transformed. It's not there yet. It's still a world of suffering and the old laws of biochemistry and whatever. But we look forward to a new heavens and a new earth where righteousness will be at home, says St. Peter. So what I guess what exists in God's mind. So in God's mind, maybe it's already here, which is probably what you're saying.
Yeah, something like that.
It's already here, but for us.
Yeah, because we live in time.
Yeah, we live in time.
Yeah. And we perceive everything as a new event, something else compared to yesterday.
Yeah. It's just the discovery of what already exists.
Yeah. Yeah. Principles that are deeper than anything we could imagine.
Yeah.
Laws of nature that are perhaps part and parcel of those 95% of the current unknown, right. Without planting the God of the gaps here. I'm not talking about God popping up in the cracks and clefts of the scientific narrative. Yeah. I'm talking about laws of nature that we ignore. And this makes the whole undertaking of science, theology, philosophy, reflection, you call it, whatever you like, makes it so exciting. Instead of being, I don't know, feeling dismantled and disappointed and disenfranchised by all this unknown, this is something that shows, wow, reality is so rich, so multi-layered. There's so much we have to do. So why should we kill each other the way we do for some words or for some ideologies and political parties and creationists and evolutionists and so on and so forth? This is where we actually are supposed to meet in those verses of yours, or whatever they point to.
Yes.
Beautiful.
No, thank you, Dora. Yes, that's good.
By the way, patristic moments.
That's good. They're always good.
My favorite Byzantine theologian, Maximus the Confessor, in the 7th century, wrote a very intense chapter, like an exegesis of a line he found in Gregory the Theologian, 4th century. Patristic exegesis, yeah. And Gregory actually said something along the lines of what you say in those verses, Kenotomunde physis, plural physis, και Θεός άνθρωπον γίνεται. The natures renew and God becomes a human being, So, but that's about the incarnation. The incarnation is also one of those moments of revelation of something that was possible and we did not know how the fact that it was possible in the mind of God, you just mentioned. So if Jesus's historical journey begins with an unexpected revelation of a certain possibility of nature, so to speak, that the nature is so designed that it can, after all these billions of years of hits and misses, can accommodate the God incarnate. So why should we worry so much about the resurrection? Or why should we be so disturbed by the fact that resurrection might bring with it a different kind of revelation of something that is much more challenging and provocative to an extent for our humble and feeble human mind?
That's great, yeah.
Like a revelation of something that is actually the end of things, the culmination of the entire project.
I remember some simple words that a former Christian scientist, the late Donald Mackay, said. You know, on the day of Pentecost, Peter said, God raised him from the dead. It was impossible that death could hold him prisoner. It was impossible. We shouldn't be surprised. This was a law that guaranteed, a law known to God, sustained by God, brought to fruition by God, a law that guaranteed that Jesus would rise from the dead. It wasn't magical, it wasn't mysterious. God always knew it. He could not but rise from the dead, God being the God he is. And it also brings to mind, going to the other extreme, a fairy story by C.S. Lewis. I guess we've read, you know, C.S. Lewis, we've read the stories of Narnia.
Yeah, but I'm a fan of the space trilogy, though.
Oh, are you? Okay. But I'm referring to the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, where the great lion was sacrificed because of the infidelity of Edmund.
Yeah, yeah.
And he broke the stone table and came alive again. And the evil witch said, "How could this be? I know the laws that go back to the beginning of time." The lion says, "But I know the magic that starts before the beginning of time."
Yeah.
And so, you know, those simple childish words have always been with me, and I'm sure with many Christians, that there are laws known to God, which means that the resurrection is something we should expect.
Yeah.
We should not be rocked by it.
This is something that I wanted to convey. Actually, I tried to convey in that second chapter of the book. Actually, applied to what we usually call miracles.
Yeah.
Which we Christians
Absolutely.
misunderstand so terribly as suspension moments when God suspends arbitrarily the order of nature, when in reality they reveal the true nature of things.
Yes, exactly.
And I think, you know, going back to Maximus, he has this idea that I think we touched on a couple of weeks ago, that we should think in terms of, or should rather consider present things in the light of future occurrences. Entoteli, he says, from the viewpoint of the finality of all things. And he says the gospel anticipates the age to come. So the gospel isn't the final revelation. Bad news for most of us. Yeah? It just anticipates the age to come. That's when the truth will be revealed entirely. And it is in the light of the age to come that we realize that the resurrection is actually supposed to happen to that end, you know. And in the light of the resurrection, we understand what the story of Israel is about. And in the light of the story of Israel, we realize what your primal testament is about. Just a matter of reminding our viewers that your poem is the appendix to your article, the primal testament. But also the primal testament might be seen as the revelation of a more fundamental law, the cosmic law, the Zeroth Testament, as I call it, because the same story is written there in the very matrix of cosmic reality. And all things hold together if we look at them like this, not like disruptions caused by an arbitrary God who does stuff according to whim. It all flows together, gels together, and it is in this light, or in the light of this meta-narrative of divine intention, that we have to look at the tragedies that unfold under our eyes, or we know of in the past, in the history of life on Earth, in the history of the cosmos, in the history of peoples of Earth, and so on and so forth. And it's enriching and it's meaningful. And instead of despair, we have reasons to be hopeful.
Indeed.
Oh my. I think when we finish this, we have to take it from the scratch, from the beginning. So let's see what's the chart of a whole new creation, of a whole new course.
Oh, so we continue. Do we?
Unless you want to take a break.
No, we can have a look at the church. The church bursts into life. No languid evolution. The worth of all affirmed the Christian revolution, proclaiming to all folk peace, justice, charity, sexes, races, classes, one in perfect parity. God's mercy reaches all. There is not one exception. We're equal in God's sight. True human rights inception. The church must serve and love, that humankind be blessed, that God's healing power will truly be confessed. And yet the church so fails God's grace to manifest. Therefore, Ecclesia semper reformanda est. United in love, we proclaim whom we follow. With rancor division, that rings very hollow. The church is so plagued by abundance of isms, its witness is damaged by fragmenting schisms. Feebly we model your indiscriminate grace, your surpassing mercy to each child of each race. O Lord, has the plan for your world been aborted? Your righteous demands have been widely distorted. We say we are disciples, but recalcitrant breed cannot extirpate the rampant selfishness need. Your people sink helpless in a morass of greed, so small our compassion for your poor and great need. We so blindly pursue the consumerist creed. Is there hope in our time? Lord, please speak, help us heed.
The story of the church is the story of Jesus. And we realize, at least looking at the last three stanzas, that there's like a crux of history, Jesus's ministry on earth, which establishes a new creation, a new course, as you call it, which is the course of the church. And the church replicates what the church sees and has seen and had seen in Jesus's life. But also the Lord summarizes in his ministry the whole history and wisdom of Israel. Because he's like the axis of history.
Yes.
And we see things, symmetrically organized. The story of Israel, the story of the church, the story of old Israel, the story of new Israel. And they find their point of conjunction, of intersection in the person and life and ministry of Jesus. Because it's the same kind of stuff, Israel was, according to your poem, Israel was set on a certain course, and the road was bumpy, and the experience of Israel was one of triumph and unfaithfulness. And it's the same that happens in the church. The church was also set on this new course. It had a more clear example in the life and ministry of the Lord. But still, the church, the new Israel, did and does what the old Israel did and perhaps does. The same kind of mixture of glorious hope and some achievements, but also so much unfaithfulness to the message of Jesus. And yet there's something, again, even despite all this, there's something beautiful in the Christian revolution, as you call it, in the church's life, that at least in principle replicates the spirit, the heart of the gospel.
Indeed.
Because as we said earlier, Jesus favors the disadvantaged, the marginalized, lame, whatever, the disabled, those whom societies keep out, push at the periphery. And the same does the church. The church, as you say, the Christian revolution proclaims to all folk peace, justice, charity. Who are these folk? Sexes, doesn't matter what you are. Races, doesn't matter what you are. Classes, doesn't matter what you are, socially speaking. One imperfect parity. This is the Christian message, actually. And this brings back to mind another chapter in Maximus, in a book on, well, let's call it liturgical ecclesiology, the mystagogy, initiation into the mystery of the church. And in the very first chapter, he contemplates the church as a replica of God's work in the universe. As God has brought into being a variety of beings, species, individuals. The church does the same. The church brings together through one faith under one head, Christ. I'm paraphrasing what Maximus says. It's a very dense, very complex chapter. A lot of stuff packed together. But we are what we are. Some are old, some are young, some are women, some are men, some are children, some are elderly, some are sick, some are healthy, some are rich, some are poor, some are well off, and so on. Educated, uneducated, slaves and free, and so on and so forth. And regardless of how much we are ourselves, and we remain ourselves, this is how God works. God doesn't bulldozer us. Remember what we said last time, God counts only to one when it comes to people.
Right.
Still, while we are what we are, God within the church brings us together. This is what Maximus says. And together lifts us up to a new kind of relationship, the resurrectional life, if you like, where regardless of what we are in our social life or by gender, race, culture, language, and so on and so forth, we have access to a level of communion, of fellowship among ourselves and with our God that nothing else can facilitate for us. And from this point, the church remains something worthwhile, an ideal worth pursuing.
Yes, the term of the Christian Revolution came to me particularly powerfully through a lovely book by David Bentley Hart, Atheist Delusions, in which he talks about how the story of Jesus, the gospel of Jesus, brought totally new understandings of humanity, which the Greeks and the Romans simply could not even understand. It was just so foreign to them. And as you were speaking, I always come back. I don't know how Orthodox Christians celebrate the Eucharist, but I love the Eucharistic meal where we come to the bar. And as you say, the whole heterogeneity of human beings can be there. And we accept the bread and we accept the wine in all our difference. And we know that we are all equally sinful, equally recipients of God's grace, equally children of God, equally blessed as we share in this communion. I think it's something we lose so easily because we tend to be now in homogeneous little groups. But there is an incredible joy in meeting with Christians from different backgrounds and receiving those emblems which make us, which confirm us in our minds as one loaf, as one body, because we share in the one loaf. Oh, we need to get out there. We need to make that known, don't we? In a world which is fragmented, and you think of race riots in England and all the racial fragmentation in colonized countries. Yeah, we are equally blessed, equally needy.
I'm unhappy to report that in the Orthodox Church, only the elect can receive.
Oh, is that so? Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not even all the believers.
Yeah, okay.
Because of the ignorance of the Dark Ages, which we Orthodox don't want to recognize as a reality in our own history.
Well, it was very dark in the West.
I don't know. We had our own darkness too, but we don't want to recognize it. During the Dark Ages, that I don't want to locate historically, but took more time than we actually enjoy recognizing. Ignorance settled in the church as though in its rightful home. And in time came this Manichaean kind of mentality that you had to undertake, I don't know what terrible ascetic feats in order to actually present yourself to receive the medicine of life.
Right.
Because that's how we call the Eucharist.
Okay.
The medicine of life. And when the celebrant distributes Holy Communion to the congregation, the celebrant says words to that effect, to this effect. The servant of God name, each name is mentioned, diversity again, receives the body and blood of Christ for the forgiveness of sins and eternal life. So if it's for the forgiveness of sins, why on earth would we expect people to undertake, I don't know what, tremendous feats of asceticism, wiping out the entire story of the supper? And yeah, so in most Orthodox churches, regular churches, if you go, on a Sunday morning or whatever, you'll see that only a few people commune.
Oh, that's sad. Yeah.
And they must be Orthodox, you Anglicans, you Catholics, you whatever. No room and no hope for you. It's so tragic.
It is tragic. But there's one way around it, I wonder. Jesus said, whenever you do this, do so in memory of me. I mean, without meaning to be subversive, when you sit down as a family to have dinner, is that also not a time of remembering the Lord?
Well, this is why one of my favorite Orthodox theologians of the 20th century, Alexander Schmemann, actually, he wrote very beautiful books about the liturgical life of the church. And he always pointed out the fact that it's not so much a matter of going to the Eucharist as it is a matter of putting yourself in a Eucharistic condition. Think alike, live alike, and you can have the Eucharist anywhere you go. So the same kind of Eucharistic mentality applicable to all sorts of circumstances of life. And yeah, so this is comforting, but it's not official Orthodox, or I should rather say Orthodoxist teaching, and yeah, but you're right. I mean, there are some exceptions. I remember studying theology even before my undergraduate studies in the seminary during the communist regime. I had a very beautiful teacher of liturgical and pastoral studies. He died a few years ago, Father Florin Boitan. And he gave us, he had a lot of experience, and he gave us examples of villages towards the borders of the country. Usually those villages are very multi-ethnic. Romania is surrounded by Bulgarians, Hungarians, Serbians, Ukrainians, and so on and so forth. And many of those border villages include 4, 5, 6 ethnicities, all of them coming together with their confession, their denomination, their faith. And my teacher said, well, what do you reckon happens in a village where, say, the Orthodox are a minority, but there's a Catholic church, maybe a Lutheran church, maybe a Calvinist church. What do you reckon those believers should do when the nearby or the next village is 2 hours drive away? Do they go to a Catholic or a Calvinist or a Lutheran church or not? Should they stay away from God just because they don't have an Orthodox church there, or vice versa? How about there's an Orthodox church there, an Orthodox parish, but the Catholics don't have one, or the Calvinists don't have one? What do you reckon? Do you kick them out? And he said, no way.
Lovely. Yeah.
But that's not the rule again. That's the discernment of a very wise person with a lot of experience. But that's not, again, it's not what the Orthodox do. The Orthodox will kick you out if you come there and you don't do the right cross, whatever, sign of the cross or whatever else. This is the tragedy of the church, and it's worse than the consumerism that you mentioned towards the end of the stanza.
Right. Yes, I mean, in John 17, the whole point is by their love, their unity, the world will know. And we're just so bad with that. The very thing that Jesus stressed, very fundamental, non-negotiable center of the community that he would set up. Yeah.
Well, the argument is usually when it comes to let's call it Eucharistic hospitality, as we have come accustomed to call it. The argument against it is even what St. Maximus says in that Mystagogy chapter 1, that what brings us together is one faith. But what these people don't realize is that one faith is the same faith of which Paul speaks in Ephesians 4. And it has nothing to do with being Anglican or Orthodox or Catholic or
yeah, that's right. One Lord, one Spirit, one Creator God. Yeah. Indeed.
you can't win.
Well, what unites us is so incredibly more powerful than what divides us. So as soon as we realize that, the more blessed we will be, and the more blessed the world will be.
Yeah. And the church will be indeed the new creation. Otherwise,
yes,
it's just the old fallen thing.
Yeah.
The pile of manure where we come from.
Yeah.
Sorry for this negative note.
Well, no, the second part of that stanza was negative too. Again, what God has done and is beautiful. We have loused up. We have failed.
Yeah. See, I believe that we are indeed plagued by abundance of isms. What I just described with the tragedy of modern contemporary orthodoxy is actually the tragedy of an ism.
Yes, it is.
I usually call it orthodoxism.
Right, yes, I picked that up. Yes, interesting term.
And it's really scandalous. But this is where we are. Yeah, isms and schisms. How you want to pronounce that word. And this is where the story of the new Israel, the church, looks very much like the story of the old Israel, with a beautiful calling and a tremendous potential for revolutionizing, as you say, the world, society, humanity, and so on. But in reality, through unfaithfulness to the commandments, the alliance, the covenant, to the gospel, it ends up in disarray and schism and and it goes worse and worse.
Yeah.
I love this one. Look, there's so much here. Your righteous demands have been widely distorted. Yeah, this is what the modern Christian world is. We have transformed the gospel and God's guidance and commandments into reasons to part ways and stay apart instead of joining hands and coming together to the altar to receive the bread and the blood that give life to all of us. We say we're disciples. Look, these are prophetic words. Disciples, but we are a recalcitrant breed, dominated by selfishness, greed, and small compassion for your poor in great need. Yeah, I can understand this, you know. Many Christians, perhaps even churches at some levels of authority, taking stand against the refugees around the world, against the foreigner, against people who try to find some shelter from whatever tragedies unfold around the world. Even, I don't know if you heard, there's a dispute now between Australia's Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition. Our Prime Minister is Labour, and the opposition, of course, is Conservative.
Yeah.
And the government wants to give visa to Palestinian refugees, even from Gaza, and the opposition says no. And this is in the name of a party that, well, at least claims is based on Christian foundations. And I wonder what kind of gospel did these people read? Because the Lord, as you say, and his church are about the marginal, the oppressed, the outcast, the disadvantaged, the disabled, trying to make something for them, to do something to lift up their lives from where they are. And Christians, inverted commas for Christians, preach a different gospel. Me, myself, and I. Greed, selfishness, and so on and so forth. And it's endless. It happens everywhere.
Yes. Yes, I guess governments are afraid of overwhelming their countries with people without the infrastructure to do it. But I guess the time to help was a long time ago, when we should have shared our wealth with people in poor countries. There needs to be a radical sharing. Yeah.
You know what disturbs me is that in the political discourse today, this is put in the name of the gospel and Christianity. This is really disturbing.
Yeah.
And usually these parties who are against the refugees, against immigrants, and so on and so forth, are very Christian. Again, inverted commas. And I think this is so detrimental to the whole message of Christ. Is the new creation another failure?
I guess that's where we leave the stanza, isn't it? Yeah, I think it's Western Christianity where the main problem is. I think for Christians who are suffering, perhaps that is where the church is growing, and that is where there is still true sacrifice. So maybe in India, in Africa, maybe in China, there is a much more authentic form of sharing suffering discipleship.
And in the Near and the Middle East, I mean, I have become, familiar in the last few years with, sort of familiar with two communities quite well represented in Australia, the Assyrians and the Copts.
Oh, right.
And they both have, to this day, to stand up for the gospel at the cost of their life.
Indeed.
In their whatever respective countries of origin. And we don't even realize that the seed of the martyrs is indeed planted there. And while many choose to flee, which is natural, those who are still there go day by day through the throes of, persecution and death.
I once met a Assyrian Christian. He was a taxi driver. I just felt so humble. We prayed together. It was an amazing experience. Just prayed in his taxi. He spoke of 800,000 Assyrian Christians who were killed 100 years ago, not counting the Armenians.
Yeah. So it's not all lost.
No, I'm sure God still brings multiple renewal movements in his church.
I know we are past our time, but the usual time, but I can't help but ask the question as to whether the current form of the church should die out the way the current form of the world should die out, according to 1 Corinthians 15, if I remember correctly. Because the current form of the world isn't the final form of the world. Should then we be surprised that the church needs, to return to your Latin dictum there, reformation, but continuously, not just in the past?
Continuously, yes, indeed.
So that it becomes more and more like the new creation to which we are heading, rather than the old one.
Yeah. Yes, may God renew us.
Okay. Sorry for this sad note, but I think your stanza invites both hope and realism. And the reality, if we acknowledge it for what it is, isn't so bright. There's hope. This is what
There is always hope where God's Spirit is. Yes. Faith, hope, and love. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Graeme. Okay, so until next time, peace upon all. Thank you. Thank you very much.